Hi, I'm Syed Abraham Hashimi. I'm a program manager on the ASP.NET team. With Visual Studio 2013, we've taken some steps to simplify mixing and matching of different technologies within ASP.NET projects. For example, you can now easily create a web forms project which has MVC as a part of it, or you could create a MVC project which has web forms, so on and so forth. We've also enabled switching authentication types per project when you actually create the project. So for example, I can create an MVC project that uses Windows Azure Active Directory, or I could select to have individual auth, no auth, or Windows Forms auth. In today's video, we'll do a kind of a brief overview of ASP.NET, and then do a deeper dive on the different authentication options that are available. All right, so I've got Visual Studio 2013 loaded up here. I'm going to create a new project. Right when I click Create New Project, when we're inside the web node, the first thing you'll notice is we just have a single ASP.NET template here, ASP.NET Web Application. In 2012, you might have noticed that we had various different templates here. We're now representing everything as one ASP.NET. Okay, now we've reached the new ASP.NET project template selector here. At this point, I can go ahead and pick the project which I want. I can also select to have any additional technologies added to that. For this demo, I'll go ahead and pick web forms. And some of the other updates that we've made to this dialog is to enable you to select the different authentication option that you would like to use for the project which gets created. We've got 4 different auth choices here. We've got no auth, individual user accounts. That's where a user will sign in with a username and password, or with a social account such as Twitter or Microsoft. We have organizational accounts. This is all about Active Directory and Windows Azure AD. We'll come back to that later on. And then we've got Windows authentication here as well. I'll go ahead and pick individual user accounts for this demo. One of the pieces of feedback that we had received in Visual Studio 2012 was that it was much more difficult than it should have been to add custom profile data to the database which is created for the ASP.NET projects. So I'll show you how can we do that here. Right after I create a new project, I've got a fully functioning web project. I can go ahead and Control F5 that and show it to you. So we've got a fully functioning web project here, including authentication, so in this case, the individual accounts. Let me go ahead and register a new user here. Go ahead and give my password, and then click Register. At this point, there's a few different things that are happening. The accounts controller is being contacted. The database, which will store your users, is being created. And then your user is being created as well. Let me show you the database which was created, and then I'll show you how can we modify this to add some custom profile info. All right, so I'll select Show Table Data here for ASP.NET users. Now this brings up the table which was just created, and we can see the demo user is there as well. So let me show you what's going to be the experience of updating that database to have some custom fields. All right, so I'll open up my application users class here. Add a first name. Add a last name. All right, let me also update my view in order to leverage this as well. So I'll go to register.aspx. Right before the password field, I'm going to add a snippet here, which I have in my toolbox for this demo. All right, so this just adds a first name control as well as a last name control. All right, so now I've modified my identity model. I've modified my view in order to take advantage of that. And then what I need to do now is update the database in order to have these new columns. We're using Entity Framework Code First migrations for this. I'm going to execute some commands inside this Package Manager console to bring my database and my app up to speed with my model changes. If you're not totally familiar with these things, check out ASP.NET for more info. I'm not going to really explain these, just so that way we can save a little bit of time. All right, I'll go ahead and enable the migrations. I'll add a migration for those name fields which I just created. And finally, I can do update database to update the schema of my local database. All right, I'm going to Control F5 here so we can go ahead and run the updated app and register a new user. All right, I'll go ahead and say register here. Might as well register myself, so I'll say Syed Ha. And then register. So now this should go ahead and register my new user. When this is done, we'll take a look at the result. Going back to Visual Studio and the Server Explorer, go ahead and refresh my data. So now, oh, actually, you know what? I missed one step here. So the first name and last name didn't get updated. I forgot a step here. So inside register.aspx, I should have updated to grab the username, the first name and last name out of this, and the code behind here. So I'll say first name equals firstname.text. Similarly for last name. This is just grabbing the value off those controls that we added. So let me go ahead and rebuild, and then I'll register another user here. So I'll log off and create Syed Ha 2 here. Okay, go ahead and register Syed Ha 2 here. All right, going back to Visual Studio, if I refresh this out one more time, so now we've got Syed Ha 2, Syed Hashimi. You know, the interesting part to note about this was the original record demo that was created before first name and last name columns ever existed. That data was preserved, it was not lost. So we can use migrations to kind of enable some of these scenarios. So now we've seen how it's a lot easier to create a ASP.NET project and update the user's profile info. Let me go ahead and move on to the Windows Azure AD support that we have here. Go ahead and pick a web application again. For this, I'll select MVC. It doesn't really matter if I was to select MVC or web forms here. The result would be the same. We have support for single tenant Windows Azure AD, multi-tenant Windows Azure AD, and then we can also configure your app to authenticate to a on-prem Active Directory. For this demo, I'll go ahead and select single org. The multi-organization support is really great if you're developing any SaaS applications. Take a look at ASP.NET for more info there. I can go ahead and give it my domain. I'll say syedha.com, and also pick the access level for the app here. Go ahead and click OK. I'll be prompted to sign in with my credentials for syedha.com. At this point, you have to sign in with an account which is a global administrator. Go ahead and give it my password here, and then I'll sign in. And then click OK to create the project. At this point, we're actually creating the project, and then we reach out into Windows Azure AD to create those server-side objects which are required to light up the authentication. And then we'll bring some of those properties back and then put it into your web project. Let me go ahead and Control F5 this and see if now users from my domain can sign into my app or not. All right, now my app has loaded up. We have blanket protection over the whole app, so now I'm prompted to sign into it. Okay, I'll go ahead and sign in with the same account that I used before, but it's important to note that at this point the application has been configured to where any user from that domain can sign in. So in this case, any syedha.com user would be able to sign into this application right now. Okay, after it's been created, if I look in the upper hand corner here, I can see that it's got my email that was brought in from a claim from Windows Azure AD. If you've tried this in Visual Studio 2012, odds are you probably followed our walkthrough that's here. This walkthrough, you can see that it's several pages long. There's lots of different steps involved here to get a project configured using Windows Azure AD. We've gone to great lengths to simplify this. I really think that we've got some great features here for Windows Azure AD and ASP.NET in general. All right, thanks for watching this short video on OneASP.NET. And for more information about Visual Studio 2013, check out ASP.NET.